an organization dedicated to the prevention of youth substance abuse. And we do this through a number of ways. One of the important ways is through these regular webinars that we offer approximately once a month. And we'd like to thank the Arizona Governor's Office of Youth, Faith, and Families and the Arizona Parents Commission for the grants that they provide that support these efforts. A little bit about the issue, about why we're looking at childhood. I know that we often focus on adolescent substance abuse, but in all good prevention efforts, you want to look upstream and look at what we can do earlier on in order to lower risks in adolescence and afterwards. So if we look at middle school, middle school is traditionally considered a venue for risk in introducing kids to substance abuse. But also kids are developing earlier than in past generations. Physically, they're developing earlier. And, even in upper elementary school, they're hitting puberty earlier, and they're feeling the emotional pressures that can lead to substance abuse. Each successive study has estimated the percentage of 12 and 13-year-olds who have tried drugs, alcohol, or tobacco at a higher level. And in 2008, the National Survey on Drug Use and Health pegged the number who had used drugs alone at 3.3%. And even though that seems low, when you consider that those are kids in elementary school, that's very concerning. In 2011, the annual Partnership Attitude Tracking Study found that 62% of teens who reported drinking alcohol said that they had their first full drink by age 15, and that's not including tasting or sipping alcohol. So again, the earlier kids are starting, the higher the risk. We want to reach them early. Okay. Also, several studies have suggested that substance use at a young age is a primary risk factor for continued use and dependence, and for subsequent problems in substance abuse later in adolescence and into adulthood. In a 20-year longitudinal study, early use of alcohol and cigarettes was the strongest predictor of progression to marijuana and other illicit drugs. Early initiators of substances are also less likely to reduce their use of substances following the receipt of intervention or prevention programs in adolescence. So they are less responsive to prevention and intervention efforts if they are introduced early. Okay, a little bit about me. My name is Teresa Londoño, and I'm a program manager here with DrugFreeAZKids.org. I get to go out into the community and interact one-on-one and in groups with typically with parents, but also with other community members like law enforcement, educators, health providers. We provide education and awareness about what the risks are and what caring adults can do to help kids avoid these problems. And the reason I have the photo of the handsome young man there on the right is because I just sent my firstborn off to college this past weekend. And the reason I put that there is just to remind us of what the end goal is, what the outcome is that we want to see for our kids. And if we keep that in mind, that end goal, and think about what we need to do upstream in order to produce those positive results, it'll help us to realize the results we want. Okay, so first of all, I'm going to take a look at what some of the trends are for younger kids, the tween years, the preteen years. And so we'll be a little bit more aware of what the specific substances are that are most attractive to kids in that age range. And then we'll look at some resources and some strategies that can be implemented in those early years to try to reduce those risks later on. So first of all, we're going to look at alcohol. Okay, a lot of times parents might think, well, maybe I need to give my child a sip of alcohol so they won't be so curious. or so they'll realize how bad it tastes and they won't want to try it later on, things like that. But a study in the journal Alcoholism, Clinical and Experimental Research indicated that children's ideas about alcohol use and the habits of their parents at age 3 were independent predictors of early onset drinking. So if children have early attitudes about alcohol, that alcohol is acceptable, if they see their parents' drinking habits, that can be an influence into early onset drinking. It also showed that onset of drinking before 4th or 5th grade, peer pressure, parental norms, and monitoring predict elementary student alcohol use and misuse. Okay, so among 8 to 10-year-old children, estimates of having sipped alcohol range from 20 to 50%. Children sipping alcohol, okay, child sipping, almost invariably takes place in the family setting. So often these kiddos are just taking a sip of their parents' drink when maybe their parents aren't paying attention, just to see what it tastes like because they're curious. And available findings suggest that an early introduction to alcohol is not protective. It does not dissuade kids from wanting to try it. Compared with abstinent peers, 5th grade kids whose parents have allowed them to sip alcohol were twice as likely to report recent use of alcohol in 7th grade. So it's important, if you are a parent yourself or if you are in the community working in prevention and educating parents and other caring adults, it's important to get that message out there. Also, sipping or tasting alcohol by 10 years of age predicted having a drink of alcohol by 14 years of age, even after controlling for other factors. And some additional information, the average age of first-time drug and alcohol use in Arizona is 13. If that's the average, plenty of kids are exposed in the elementary school years. Nationally, the average age of first use for boys is as young as 11, for girls is 13. In Arizona, 2/3 of teens have used alcohol by the time they finished high school. And people who have their first alcoholic drink at 14 or younger are 6 times more likely to develop a drinking problem than those who don't drink until legal age. Okay, the good news in all this, though, kids whose parents have talked to them about the dangers of drugs and alcohol are up to 50% less likely to use. So we want to encourage parents to have those conversations early and often with their kiddos. Also, kids who do not use drugs and alcohol report that one of their main reasons for their choice not to use is that they don't want to disappoint their parents. So if their parents are clear about their expectations that they don't want their child to drink or use drugs, children will receive that message and it will be a very powerful influence. Okay, another trend, moving on from alcohol, cough medicine, whether it's over-the-counter cough medicine or prescription cough medicine that contains codeine. These are very dangerous to kids, and a lot of times kids don't understand the dangers involved with this because they see it as safe, because it's readily available in the pharmacy. Doctors prescribe it. They see it as safe. A popular way that codeine cough syrup is used, especially among middle schoolers, is that they will mix it with a clear soda and hard candies. And it's colorful, it's sweet. They're not even aware of what the quantity of codeine is that they're ingesting. Another powerful influence in getting kids to maybe decide to try this is that it's very common in music videos and in the lyrics of a lot of songs. So they're seeing the drinks in the music videos, they're seeing their, the singers that they like drinking it in the music videos, and so that will influence them. Again, those prevention discussions that this is dangerous. Okay. Inhalants are another thing. A lot of kids have the idea that this isn't really using drugs. They don't see these household products, these aerosol household products, as drugs. But when they're huffed, they can be very dangerous. According to the National Inhalant Prevention Coalition, one of the attractions is that the effects can be felt almost immediately. You don't have to wait for something to happen. According to a study from the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, in 2010, about 2 million kids between the ages of 12 and 17 had tried inhalants, and the most popular being glue, shoe polish, and paint. So parents should look to see if their children have a sudden drop in grades, if there's a rash around their mouth or their nose, a change in friends, a change in habits, weight loss, or the odor of these products on their breath. Inhalants, some of the symptoms, they can cause nausea, nosebleeds, impaired coordination, and in some cases death. Okay. Also, marijuana edibles. A study published in the journal Clinical Pediatrics found that the rate of marijuana exposure among kids 5 years of age and younger rose 147.5% between 2006 and 2013. And that was nationally. The rate increase during that same time period in the states where marijuana has been legalized before 2000 was an increase of 610%. There's been a rate increase of almost 16% per year after legalization between 2000 and 2013. The National Poison Data System annual reports show that 19.5% increase in marijuana single exposures between 06 and 13. And this is important because children are more susceptible to severe neurological effects like coma, ataxia, which is the loss of bodily movement. You can't control your bodily movements. And that will affect children. Those effects can be seen in pediatric exposures when kids consume the same dose that adults typically would consume. The other thing is the packaging of these products is attractive to kids. A lot of times the foods that contain the THC are dessert kind of foods. They're sweet, candy bars, lollipops, cookies, and so they're very attractive to young kids. And if a kid finds a cookie, the dose for the marijuana cookie is maybe 1/6 of the cookie. But if a kid finds a cookie, they're typically going to gobble the whole cookie down. So that can be also an increased risk for these exposures, these pediatric exposures. Okay, caffeine is another substance that we need to consider when we're thinking about our kids. A lot of times kids don't understand, and a lot of times their parents also don't understand the difference between energy drinks and sports drinks. But there is a significant difference. The sports drinks are meant to hydrate and to replenish the electrolytes. They can contain sugar, but no drugs, no caffeine. The energy drinks can contain high amounts of caffeine, and in recently there are also energy drinks combined with alcohol, and that combination can be very dangerous. It has been blamed for the deaths of teens and college students. But now we're seeing elementary school students drinking these drinks for the purpose of catching a buzz. Even without alcohol, these drinks are dangerous to kids' health. They can be a gateway for elementary school kids. They don't realize that they're consuming a drug. They're not cognizant of that. It's not drug use in their minds. and this can cause heart palpitations. It can affect their heart functioning, their neurological functioning, and their kidneys as well. Their electrolyte balance can be thrown off as well. An additional way that kids can consume caffeine is through caffeine strips. And this also, just like the energy drinks, can be dangerous. Consuming too many of these energy strips can cause harm to the body. It can affect sleep, mood, anxiety, gastrointestinal issues, and cause severe headaches. The Academy of American Pediatrics recommends that people under 21 years old should have no more than 100 milligrams of caffeine in one day. And in one of these strips, typically contain 100 milligrams of caffeine. So taking as many as 4 of these strips can put people at a toxic level of caffeine consumption for one day. Okay. Another substance that can be very attractive to younger kids is nicotine in liquid form. Okay, this is the liquid that is used in the vaporizers and the e-cigarettes. They can be colorful, and they are flavored with sweet flavors that can be very attractive to kids. Also, in some markets, nicotine is now available in dissolvable forms. And as you can see here on the slide, you can see similarities to some other products that are not harmful, like breath mints and the strips for breath fresheners. A lot of times kids won't be able to distinguish between what's safe and what products can harm them. But nicotine is addictive. We don't want kids forming those addictions early on, because the earlier the addiction begins, the harder it will be. Okay, so now that we've kind of covered a general idea of what substances are particularly attractive or commonly used among the younger kiddos, I wanted to take a little bit of time here to talk about, to back up, to kind of go upstream a little bit and look at what we can be doing as parents and caregivers of kids at different ages and stages to lower risk. Okay, so we'll look at the baby and toddler stages, and we'll look at preschool and school-age kids and what we can be doing at these different stages. Okay, so first of all, I wanted to, I wanted to show you a video of what's called the still face experiment. And this gives an idea of the effect on even an infant when they don't have that close connection with their adult caregiver. And I'll allow the researcher here to explain it, and then we'll come back after.
Babies this young are extremely responsive to the emotions and the reactivity and the social interaction that they get from the world around them. This is something that we started studying 30, 40 years ago, when people didn't think that infants could engage in social interaction. In the still face experiment, what the mother did was she sits down and she's playing with her baby, who's about a year of age.
I'm my girl. Oh.
And she gives a greeting to the baby gives a greeting back to her. This baby starts pointing at different places in the world, and the mother's trying to engage her and play with her. They're working to coordinate their emotions and their intentions, what they want to do in the world. And that's really what the baby is used to. And then we ask the mother to not respond to the baby. The baby very quickly picks up on this, and then she uses all of her abilities to try and get the mother back. She smiles at the mother. She points because she's used to the mother looking where she points. The baby puts both hands up in front of her and says, "What's happening here?" She makes that screechy sound at the mother, like, "Come on, why aren't we doing this?" Even in this 2 minutes, when they don't get the normal reaction, they react with negative emotions, they turn away, they feel the stress of it, they actually may lose control of their posture because of the stress that they're experiencing.
I'm here. And what are you doing? Oh, yes. Oh, what a big girl.
It's a little like the good, the bad, and the ugly. The good is that normal stuff that goes on, that we all do with our kids. The bad is when something bad happens, but the infant can overcome it. After all, when you stop the still face, the mother and the baby start to play again. The ugly is when you don't give the child any chance to get back to the good. There's no reparation, and they're stuck in that really ugly situation.
Okay, so that was kind of difficult to watch while that baby struggled, not gaining the mom's attention. And this is significant when it comes to substance abuse risk, because high stress can impair brain development, especially when that high stress is continual. As the researcher explained in the video, when the infant or small child cannot recover from the stress. Okay, so there's different types of stress. There's positive stress that all of us encounter, including children, when we're trying something new, when we are reaching a new developmental goal, and so on. So that can be positive. We don't want to protect our kids from all stress. Then there is tolerable stress from which kids can recover, as in the case here, when the mom returned her attention to her child. But then there's also something called toxic stress, when the cortisol levels in the brain, the cortisol being the hormone that is released in the brain under high stress conditions, when that remains high for extended periods of time and the child doesn't have a chance to recover, that can predict higher incidence of substance abuse later on in life. Okay, so we're going to talk more about the early years and what caring adults can do, whether they're parents or the child's caregiver, to avoid those high stress levels. Okay, studies have shown the connection between toxic stress in childhood, or sometimes that's called adverse childhood experiences, that can produce a vulnerability to addiction later in life. Again, that extended toxic stress state can alter the structure of the way the brain develops. The way the brain develops, it can affect cognitive development, and like I said, also the risk of substance abuse later in life. So some of the strategies that we can use in the early years to help kids to manage these big feelings, these stressors, these anxieties. One of the things is to stay present. A lot of times the common wisdom is if a child is in the middle of a meltdown or a tantrum, we put them in timeout. And if we really think about it, what are we communicating to that child? When you are stressed, when you are experiencing an emotion that's too big for you, that's overwhelming for you, I will turn my back to you. Okay, I will not support you. You know, that's the way that can be experienced with some kiddos. And so staying present with your child through those difficult emotions as they express them, as they work them out, through crying, through screaming, through a tantrum, doesn't mean that we should give in to them, but it's possible to stay present with them and say, I understand you're upset, empathizing with them. Another thing is to say, I love you and. So I love you and I won't let you hit the dog. Or I love you and I can't let you hurt the other kids. I can't let you pull your sister's hair, something like that. So you are validating the connection you have with that child while at the same time setting a healthy limit. In high anxiety and avoidance situations, you can break the situation into baby steps. So you're slowly increasing the child's tolerance to the stressor. An example, my son had a phobia of going into the lunchroom at school when he was in first grade. He was deathly afraid of going in and eating lunch. So I was going and meeting him there every day. But I wanted him to learn that he could do that and that he was capable of managing that. So I talked to him and we came up with a plan so that every few days I would slowly shorten the time I was with him until finally I was just going there to wave to him as he was on his way into the cafeteria, and then eventually I didn't need to be there at all. So that's another way that parents and adults can respond to anxiety and stress early on in childhood. Okay, a couple of resources for those who are either parenting young kids or for those of you who work with parents of young kids. Evolutionary Parenting is a website, and you can also follow them on Facebook. It's the principal author is Tracy Cassells. She's the founder and primary writer for this blog. She has a bachelor's in cognitive science, a master's in clinical psychology, and a PhD in developmental psychology. She studied how certain evolutionary factors affect children's empathic behavior, and also critically evaluated theory of mind in children. So she's a very well qualified writer on this topic. And she goes into things like how to find alternatives to tantrums, how to support our kids in facing those big emotions. And so this shows a bit of how when a child has a low distress level, they are more likely to be able to self-soothe. The longer the distress lasts, the less likely they're going to be able to self-soothe. So we can look at some steps, okay? Recognizing frustration, teaching our children to recognize frustration, teach them vocabulary to identify and communicate their feelings, and model empathy towards them, even when they are experiencing distressing emotions. Step 2, helping them to calm down, teaching them coping and calming strategies like walking away, deep breathing, or even singing or silly behavior, using humor. And then once those two things are addressed, then you can look at problem solving. Guide them through brainstorming potential solutions. Mediate if necessary without dictating a solution. And the use of family meetings can also be helpful. Another resource, hand-in-hand parenting. This is a great resource for parents of little ones. It addresses topics like breastfeeding, sleep training, what to do or how to handle it when those little ones push our buttons, hitting, using play to overcome fears and conflict, sibling rivalry, all types of things, so that you can get some ideas on how parents can, again, lower that sense of stress and increase the sense of connection among the family. Because children who learn a lot about the risks of drugs and alcohol from a caregiver are less likely to use drugs and alcohol through their adolescence. Something as simple as having family dinners together regularly. The National Center on Addiction and Substance Abuse at Columbia University found that kids who have dinner with their families are less likely to use drugs and drink. So it's something very simple that can have very profound effects, protective effects for our kids. And those kiddos who choose not to use, they report one of the major reasons they choose not to use is that they don't want to disappoint their parents. Okay, so in order for that to be true, they have to understand that their parents would be disappointed if they did try to use something. I invite all of you to look at our website. We've got a lot of great resources on our website, including, go back here, we have Spanish language resources, how to have prevention talks with your kiddos at different ages and stages. Our drug guide is there, treatment guide, intervention guide, treatment locator. Also, there's information on our scheduled free active parenting workshops to help parents of either elementary aged kids or parents of teens learn effective parenting strategies to maintain the connection and lower risks. Also, I would invite you all to return to our future webinars. The next one we have scheduled is for September 16th, and our topic will be pop culture and drugs. What does this mean for our youth? So I am sorry, I know I went a little bit over. If any of you have questions, please feel free to type them in, or you can feel free to email me and I can get back to you as well. Before you leave, I would ask you to please fill in this very brief survey. It helps us as we go forward and plan our future webinars. So I will give you a chance to fill in your responses, and I'll check here for any questions. Okay, I have a question here. Will the presentation be available to view later on? Yes, all of our webinars are archived on our website. So if you go to DrugFreeAZKids.org/webinars, there's a listing of the upcoming webinars, and our past webinars are archived for you there. Let's see. And I had a question about what edibles look like. So going back to the marijuana edibles, those products can look very close to the same products without marijuana. The packaging can be very close. One example in particular that comes to my mind is a product called Pot Tarts. And they're packaged in a box that looks almost exactly like Pop-Tarts do, except there's a little marijuana leaf in the bottom corner of the box. So kids looking at that product, it would be very difficult for them to distinguish between the product containing marijuana and the product that doesn't. So therein lies a lot of the danger there. So any other questions, please type them in the box. Or again, feel free to email me and I can follow up with any of you later. I thank you very much for attending. I hope this was helpful. And again, I appreciate feedback that you can give us as we go forward. It'll help us to better meet your needs and topics that you're interested in. So thank you very much. I appreciate you all tuning in today.